Good evening, and welcome to the Carnegie Town Hall. The regular meeting of the City Planning Commission will be called to order, and we will begin with a few introductory remarks. The City of Sioux Falls Planning Commission serves as an advisory board to the City Council. It is a responsibility of the Planning Commission to consider and make recommendation on land use and zoning matters. Conditional use permits and minor amendment requests will have final action here this evening, unless appealed to the City Council in writing within 5 days. Any decision made on preliminary subdivision plans or future land use amendment requests tonight will be referred to the City Council for final action at the third council meeting of the month. Any decision made on rezoning requests, major amendments, or ordinance amendments tonight will be referred to the City Council for final action at the first council meeting of the month. Council meetings are held at 7 p.m. here in the Carnegie Town Hall and are televised. Any action taken here tonight on a final development plan is final. The Planning Commission will first approve the consent agenda and then the regular agenda. In order to place certain non-controversial items on the Commission's consent agenda, planning staff and the Planning Commission applies the following criteria. First, the request conforms with the City 2015 Land Use Plan. Second, the planning staff recommends approval of the request. And third, there are no audience members present or written comments received in opposition to the request. And fourth, the application meets all conditions and requirements of the ordinance. Once the consent agenda items are approved, you are free to leave. For the regular agenda, the following normal public hearing procedure will be followed. By first requesting planning staff to present a brief report on each item. Second, the petitioner will be requested to come forward and make a statement or answer questions. After the petitioner, anyone from the audience who wishes to address a particular agenda item shall be recognized. Then, the Planning Commission will discuss the matter further and take appropriate action. We ask that anyone addressing the Planning Commission other than staff move to the podium microphone, identify themselves, and state their address for the record. Please limit your comments to less than 5 minutes. As a courtesy to everyone here tonight, we ask you please either turn off or silence your cell phone and pager. This meeting is being televised on Channel 16 and will be rebroadcast Saturday at 10 a.m., Tuesday at 7 p.m., and Wednesday at 1 a.m. Thank you for your cooperation. Good evening. I will start by reading the consent agenda items. Item 1 is approval of November 7, 2007 minutes of the regular meeting. Item 2 is plats. Item 3, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, rezoning property at 4201 South Minnesota Avenue from the S Institutional District to the O General Office District, petition number 2007-11-09, and amending the official zoning map of the City of Sioux Falls. Item 4 is an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, rezoning property at Santa Rosa Circle and East 73rd Street from the RS2 Residential District to the Diamond Valley Plan Development District, petition number 2007-11-10, and amending the official zoning map of the City of Sioux Falls. Item 5 is ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, rezoning property at South Dakota Highway 100 and East 49th Street from the AG Agriculture District to the S Institutional District, petition number 2007-11-11, and amending the official zoning map of the City of Sioux Falls. Item 6 is an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, a major amendment, petition number 2007-11-16 to Chapter 15.45.070 Plan Development Districts, Thielen Business Center Plan Development District at North Career Avenue and West Cayman Street, allowing changes in land use as reflected in the revised map and amending the official zoning map of the City of Sioux Falls. Item 7 is a conditional use permit in the I-1 Light Industrial District to allow an off-premise sign of 672 square feet at North National Avenue and East 63rd Street. Item 8 is a conditional use permit in the I-1 Light Industrial District to allow an off-premise sign of 672 square feet at North National Avenue and East 63rd Street. Item 9, final development plan in sub-area W, Platinum Valley Plan Development District, to construct a residential fourplex at West 93rd Street and South Louise Avenue. Item 10 is the final development plan in Subarea W, Platinum Valley PD Plan Development District to construct a residential fourplex at West 93rd Street and South Louise Avenue. Item 11, final development plan in Subarea W, Platinum Valley Plan Development District to allow construction of fourplex residential buildings, 3600 and 3602 West 93rd Street. Those are the consent agenda items. Is there anyone from the audience who objects to any of those? All right, if not, is there objections from the Planning Commission members on the consent agenda items? If not, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Mr. Chair, I would recommend approval of the consent agenda as stated.
I second that.
All right, there's a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The consent agenda is approved. Next is the regular agenda, and there's going to be two changes. They've been recommended by staff. The first one is going to be item 11A, and this application was referred back to the Planning Commission by the City Council to discuss impacts to surrounding land uses, specifically the park at 325 North Minnesota Avenue. That's item 11A. And then item 11B will be added also. That's a conditional use permit in C2 General Commercial District to allow an on-sale establishment as an accessory use to a restaurant, 802 East 10th Street, and that was an omission to the agenda, so we want to add item 11B. And then item 22 is withdrawn. And item 22 is an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, amending Appendix B, Chapter 15.71, fees of the revised ordinance of the city by revising planning and zoning application fees, and that has been withdrawn by staff. So is there a motion to approve the revised regular agenda?
I'll move to approve the revised agenda, adding items 11A and 11B, and withdrawing item number 22.
I'll second that motion.
All right, there's a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The revised regular agenda is approved. So our first item is item 11A. This is the application that was referred back to the Planning Commission by City Council to discuss impacts to surrounding land uses, specifically the park, 325 North Minnesota Avenue. Conditional use permit in the C2 General Commercial District to allow on-sale alcoholic beverage establishment. Staff report, please.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Steve Randall. I'll be representing planning staff on this item and other items tonight. The referral back to you by the City Council requests discussion of possible impact to surrounding land uses, specifically the park. If you have any questions about the application, I'd be glad to try to answer those. It was presented to you with a recommendation for approval by staff concerning three criteria for evaluation, and those criteria were listed in the report and are open again this evening for discussion. If you choose to make a recommendation, it should be to confirm the previous recommendation for approval, and then you would either approve or deny that confirmation based on your discussion. The council is looking for that discussion, and I leave that to you. That concludes staff report.
Questions for Steve? Ken?
Steve, we addressed this back in August, if I'm not mistaken. Could you explain to us what exactly happens with one of the, when we have something before us and it's approved, does it become automatic, or is that then forwarded to the City Council after we have our meetings on it?
A conditional use permit is heard only by the Planning Commission. That's one public hearing. There is a waiting time after your recommendation for approval or denial in which either the applicant or someone in the community could appeal that decision to the City Council. It's a 5 working day waiting time. In this particular case, we did not receive an appeal, and a decision letter was rendered on September 7th, 2007. To the applicant, Mr. Booty, recommending or saying that the Planning Commission has approved your petition and it is effective with the following stipulations. One, that it's approved for this applicant and tenant space only. Two, that a security management plan be approved by the police department. And three, that business and alcohol signage shall not be visible from residential uses.
So if that be the case with a conditional use permit, City Council does not have an opportunity to review our decisions on those?
Not unless it's appealed officially. The action that the City Council took in this case was based on the issuance of a license. The Planning Commission does not approve or deny license issues, only the land use issues. In this case, the City Council felt that it wanted some more discussion from you on the land use issues.
To your knowledge, was a license sought by the petitioner after August?
The petitioner is here and could respond to that question.
Very good. Thank you, Steve.
Any other questions for Steve? So, Steve, I have a question on procedure here. So we're going to either have a motion and then a vote to reconfirm, or a completely different motion if we would choose to add additional stipulations or change it or something?
My understanding is that you have acted on the petition. What you would be doing is confirming your previous discussion of the land use issues. That's what the council is asking for.
Okay. Thank you.
Steve, before you leave, can you remind us again of the criteria that we evaluated relative to the land use when we approved this application?
The first one has to do with concentration of uses or similar uses. We would like to avoid an undue concentration. Undue is not defined. It's in your purview to decide if it's undue or not. The second one has to do with proximity to children, so that we do not encourage or allow children to be recreating, occupying, or be close in activity to the proposed use. And we tend to look at that as being unsupervised children. And the third one would be impact on surrounding properties, undue impact on surrounding properties, adverse impact. I was speaking off the cuff.
Good job.
I have notes in hand. Thank you. To quote from the zoning ordinance, number 1, that it will not create an undue concentration of similar uses. Number 2, it is not in an area where children could be expected to frequent, patronize, or recreate. And number 3, it is compatible with characteristics of surrounding uses and not injurious to surrounding properties.
Thank you.
Other questions for Steve?
Steve, were you at last Monday night's council meeting?
I was not.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you. Is the applicant here, please?
Steve Booty, 3501 South Judy, Sioux Falls. I think Ken had a question, and I didn't catch it, Ken.
Mr. Chair, if I may, Steve, you were approved for a conditional use permit at this location. I think that night that we did that, I think I had asked you a question. I think you were desired to open a casino there, if I remember correctly.
Correct.
And I think I had asked you if you were allowed to, if you weren't allowed to open a casino there, was your intention to open a business anyway? And I think at that particular point in time, you answered it in the negative. Did you apply for a license and a license for a casino at that location?
I think, I'd have to defer you to Kirby on that. Kirby is actually the tenant for the location and would be running the casino.
When you applied for the license, the first time back in August, were you doing that for Kirby? Or were you doing that for yourself?
At that time, we owned the license, the liquor license. It was one of 2 licenses that we bought in the name of Waterfall Plaza for that development. And we did transfer one of those licenses over to Tinner's Bar and Grill, and had hoped that we would possibly use the second sometime for an outlot where we would lure a restaurant or what have you. And we kind of backed off on the restaurant idea at Waterfall because we didn't want to cause undue concentration of parking for the other tenants. So at that point, we started to make plans for the other liquor license, and a natural location seemed to be our empty suite in our property at 6 in Minnesota. And after a lot of time and deliberation and thinking, well, do we really want to be in the casino business? We prefer to have somebody else run it for us, sell them the license. And Kirby came to the plate and decided to take us up on our offer of leasing the space and selling him the license. And at this point, we went ahead and did the conditional use in anticipation of that possibly happening. And since then, it has happened. So that's kind of where we're at in the process. It's constantly evolving, I guess.
Steve, were you at Monday's meeting, commission meeting? Okay.
No.
Thank you.
I didn't know it was going to be an issue at Monday's meeting, I guess. So.
Any other questions for Steve? All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Is there anyone from the audience that cares to speak on this item? All right, I guess not. So we'll be looking for...
Mr. Chair?
Yep.
I'm wondering, I was led to believe the city council was going to be here this evening, and he's not going to be here. Would it be possible to visit with staff again?
You want to talk to Jeff? Or
I'd love to talk to
Mike,
Jeff.
Okay, Jeff.
Jeff Schmidt, representing planning staff. Yes, sir.
Jeff, I'm confused, and maybe I'm the only one that is. If I am, I apologize. When we granted the conditional use permit, I was led to believe that the applicant was going to apply for a casino license, and that if he wasn't able to obtain that, that he wasn't going to go through with opening a business there. I was also under the impression that there were some restrictions to obtaining a casino license. And a few of the things that I was under the impression was that it had to be a certain distance from a park, it had to be a certain distance from a school, it had to be those two particular. I guess at that meeting in August, I was led to believe, hey, that's not an issue that we have to concern ourselves with, that is a council issue. I'm now being led to believe that that's not a council issue once we grant a conditional use permit. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. And let me just, again, for the viewing audience and for planning commissioners, kind of rephrase it again. When planning staff stands in front of the planning commission, what we state is that this is a land use issue, and to look at whether or not this is an appropriate use of this land as well as the use itself. Should this on-sale alcohol beverage establishment be operating there based on the three criteria that Steve mentioned? Can those things be addressed? Now, the follow-up questions are, what about the liquor license? Not the permit that we look at, but the liquor license. Who's going to look at that liquor license? City council addresses the liquor license, not ourselves. And there are standards in place in regards to liquor license, in regards to the proximity for a video lottery establishment next to a church or a school or a park. However, that only has to do with video lottery if they're doing a malt beverage or wine license, not if they have an actual liquor license. So again, based upon their own standards, city council standards, their own laws that are on the books, they have to deal with those. The standards that we have as planning commission and planning commissioners, which are the same city ordinances that are passed, are the ones that are in front of you that Steve Randall mentioned. And we want to make sure that you're reviewing them tonight and saying, whatever gets placed there tonight, okay? If it's a liquor establishment, if it's a video lottery, we're really kind of just stating it may be an on-sale alcohol beverage establishment. Would it create an undue concentration? You have to decide that. Will it be in an area where children could be expected to frequent, patronize, or recreate? Can you decide that? And 3, is it compatible with the characteristics of the surrounding uses and not injurious to the surrounding properties? Did you consider that last time? Yes, we did. And does it change your opinion this time? That's what you have to decide.
Jeff, were you at Monday's council meeting?
No, I was not. Mr. Cooper got to go.
All right. I got the impression from watching that meeting, and I realize reasonable people can have different opinions as to what should be one place or another. I was left with the feeling that the commission, the council,
Correct.
was being left out of the decision-making process as far as the casino is concerned. And I've been thinking long and hard about that, since I found out it was coming back to us. I'm not sure that shouldn't be in their sort of viewpoint. I'm not sure if that isn't something that they should be addressing. And I don't see a way for them to have an opportunity to address that again unless we reject what we previously approved.
Or in my opinion, again, it's only my opinion, unless the law gets changed. Because right now, the law that we have to base our opinions on and our vote on is the law that's in front of us. And as Steve Randall mentioned, the conditional use could be appealed to City Council by neighbors, by adjacent property owners, and City Council would hear that. However, that hasn't been done. As well as if the state law was changed and said all video lottery has a 2,000-foot spacing. At that point, City Council could review that. But at this point, City Council's laws, the ones that they're based upon, just state wine and beer video lottery. So it's not being taken away from them, it's just that's the laws that are in front of them, and that's my understanding.
So Jeff, if we reaffirm our decision tonight,
Correct.
we go back through the criteria, we reestablish, will that 5-day appeal window open up again for someone who might want to address this issue?
I don't believe so. All we've been told tonight is, again, City Council wanted to hear from Planning Commission to say, wow, we didn't even think about those land use issues last time. We kind of missed the opportunity for, it was across the street from a park, and it was next to residential. We missed those 2 opportunities to review those situations.
Jeff? Excuse me. If we were to rescind that,
Yep.
would that not give the petitioner the opportunity to appeal our decision?
Yes, it
And
would.
have that discussion at City Council?
Yes, it
on
would.
the 17th?
Yeah. They could appeal your decision as well as the adjacent property owners could if you approved it. Yes, sir. Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Jeff?
I have one other one. At the time we originally approved this, Mr. Booty was the petitioner, and as he clearly states now, he has an actual tenant to that. So we, as we look back upon what our stipulations were previously, number 1 being approved for this applicant and tenant space only, it would be possible for us to change that stipulation, or would we have to do a new motion, second, reaffirm the 3 stipulations?
As we discussed today, I think we should make the recommendation to change that stipulation. I think it's still in the same context and intent of what we were trying to do before. As even Mr. Booty mentioned when he got up here, he was the applicant. It was for that tenant. You'll have many of these items in front of you this evening where our intent has been and your intent has been, it's for that tenant space. And that's what we've been trying to do, to make that amendment.
Thank you, Jeff.
So how do we go about doing that? A whole new motion with a changed stipulation?
Yes. And reaffirming your vote or denying your vote.
Okay. Other questions?
Well, I don't know if I have a question for Jeff. I think that since we're in this discussion stage, maybe we have to also understand the process. I understand Kenny's concern that maybe there's a motivation or a thought process to send this back to council for their consideration. However, if I'm understanding the process here, we've already considered the criteria. We talked about school, church, and parks. In the previous discussion, there was nothing that I remember coming from school. There was nothing that I think Parks was silent on the issue. But I think we have to decide whether if we're going to reverse this decision, is it only for the reason to send it back to council? And is that the right reason to reverse it? The applicant made the application, we made the consideration based on the criteria. Really nothing has changed. I think it's subjective as to whether it's undue concentration. Doesn't seem to be. There doesn't seem to be an issue of unsupervised kids. It seems to be compatible for the neighborhood because there's a lot of retail and on sale and liquor in that area. So I guess I'm suggesting that we consider either confirming this or rejecting this based on this criteria, but I guess I'm struggling with whether we should consider reversing this or denying this just simply to send it back to the council. I'm not sure if that's the right process or not, and I was hoping perhaps that some legal people would be here this evening to guide that, but that's my point. So,
David, I'd agree with you. In August, we looked at it, and we looked at the criteria, and we made our decision. And I think we need to move forward and feel good about the decision we made in August, because we did look at all those items and feel good about our decision and stand with it.
And if something had changed in that time,
Right.
then maybe there would be a reason to reconsider that. The neighborhood has not changed. The retail and the commercial in that area has not changed. So I'm struggling with a reason to reject or send this back only because the council would like to look at this again. And based on what Mr. Schmidt says, that's not really, we did our job and they did their job, but unfortunately, the way the city-state laws are, they're not able to look at this perhaps as close as they could. But I think we have to look at the existing city codes and the state laws and go with that. So.
I would agree. I think that we all recognize that there's a gap between the city laws and the state laws and how we got to where we are today. But I think that we were all pretty comfortable when we approved this based on the criteria that we were asked to look at back in August.
One other thing I recall looking at was the neighborhood, and there's a good alley separation behind the building. There's multifamilies behind there. There's street parking, and we had decided at that time that wasn't an issue either that would affect the residents.
I think what's changed in my mind is when I voted for it, I was under the impression that he wasn't going to qualify for a casino. And I think if I'd have known at the time that the casino was an automatic deal for him, I think I'd have changed my vote. Now, not that I'm death against casinos, and I know Steve, he's a good operator, but I think it's a different set of rules than that all the casinos are working under. If it's a malt beverage license, they have to adhere to a certain distance from some of the things we've talked about. Now, I get the impression that because it's a state license, that those rules now don't affect a state license. And I'm not sure that's a level playing field. And that is different in my mind. Now, maybe it was just my mind that night when we voted on it. But I was under the impression that, no, there couldn't be a casino there. And I'm surprised that there could.
Other commission discussion?
Well, Kenny, if you have a malt malt liquor or a on-sale hard liquor, that qualifies you to apply for a casino.
I think if
And I don't
staff will
think
come
that
up.
has changed.
If I were applying for a malt liquor license, could I also apply and have a casino at that location?
You could apply, correct.
Apply.
It was
Is-
my understanding also that the city would have to approve that, though, if they
Correct.
applied for the casino.
And I'm getting the impression that the city now doesn't have to apply this applicant, or doesn't have to approve this applicant for the casino.
Because it is a liquor license. They still have the ability to approve or deny the liquor license, but whether or not he has the 2,000-foot spacing issue on a video lottery from a park, they don't have the jurisdiction on that. They could say you cannot have a video lottery establishment within 2,000 foot from spacing from a park if it was a malt beverage license, a wine or a malt beverage license. There, they could deny that, but they can't do that with a liquor license.
Was the council aware of that?
It's speculation on my part. I can't. It's not.
Jeff, do we have any data on the use of that park? I
Do we have any data on the use of that park? No, we do not. It's adjacent to Minnesota Avenue. It used to be adjacent to the bus stop. And again, it was a good waiting spot, transition spot for people that came in and out of the bus depot.
So
Now
we don't know
that's
how many children or adults or anybody that's ever at that location?
no. It's infrequently used.
Okay.
It's a difficult location.
There's no equipment,
There's no equipment there. I don't think there's no parking there, thank you, Shauna. There may be one bench, but there's no shelter.
Okay. Really, the adjacency issues is more about the school on the same side of the street than the park, or on the same. But I just think that we looked at it and we were all comfortable with it.
And Hawthorne's quite a ways, it's quite a distance.
And, I mean, our ability to impact placement of video lottery is something that's not been under our control for a number of years now.
Correct.
And that's the point. I think it's been under the council's control, but because of the conditional use permit, it's taken them out of being able to impact that. The point I would make is if we did rescind it, it would take it back to the council level. They could certainly have a debate about it with the petitioner, and where that end up, I'm not sure. I think if we approve it again, I think the council's hands are tied as far as having any further discussion about it.
You know what, Kenny, I appreciate everything that you're saying. However, I think what I'm gathering from listening to what everybody else is saying is that they were under certain impressions last time, and those have not changed. And I can tell you that myself, what I looked at and the criteria that I evaluated hasn't changed. And I can appreciate that the council might be in a position on this that they don't want to be in, but again, we have a given set of laws that we have to look at. So having said all that, I'm going to make a motion that we confirm our decision that we made in August with the three stipulations, but I would like to make stipulation number 1 approved for this tenant or business owner only. Number 2, to provide a security management plan approved by the police department. And number 3, business and alcohol signage shall not be visible from a residential uses.
Second. All right, there's a motion and a second. Just so we're clear, you're just changing the first, instead of the applicant, for tenant or business owner. Correct?
Yes. Thank you.
All right, there's a motion and a second with the changes, and to reconfirm the decision, is there any commission discussion, any further discussion?
I would just like to add on to what Jesse said. I appreciate the conversation that we've had here, both at the council level and tonight. And Kenny, what you brought to this, I think it's created some dialogue. Hopefully there'll be more conversation about the gap that exists between city law and state law and how we might overcome that. But I am comfortable with the decision that we've made, but I do appreciate you bringing that forth so that there could be some conversation about it. So I will vote in favor of the motion.
Anyone else?
Well, I think you can sense I'm not going to be supporting it. And simply, I don't know the petitioners, but I know them by reputation. They're both nice fellas. Nothing against casinos. I just don't think it's a level playing field with some of the other applicants. I'd be real curious to know how many malt beverage licenses have been granted that can open up a casino that didn't fall into the criteria that the city council set up a long time ago. And I have a feeling there wouldn't be very many, if any. And I think that that's my concern, is that the rules are different for this particular license than other ones.
Yeah, the city council wanted us to discuss the impacts, and I think we certainly have done that. So on the motion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Aye.
The motion carries and decision has been reconfirmed. Our next item on the regular agenda is 11B, conditional use permit in the C2 General Commercial District to allow on-sale establishment as an accessory use to a restaurant, 802 East 10th Street. Staff report, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Shauna Goldhammer, and I represent planning staff this evening. The applicant is proposing to operate the existing restaurant previously approved for alcohol sales at this location. A conditional use permit was granted by the City Council back in June of 2002 with 3 stipulations. They were, 1, that this approval was for this applicant only, 2, that this is for on-sale alcohol establishment as an accessory use to a restaurant, and 3, submittal of a security management plan is required for review and approval by the police department prior to license issuance. Again, for an on-sale alcohol beverage establishment, we have 3 land use criteria. First, that it will not create an undue concentration of similar uses. 2, that it is not an area where children could be expected to frequent, patronize, or recreate, and 3, that is compatible with characteristics of surrounding uses and is not injurious to surrounding properties. The applicant is taking over an operation of an existing restaurant. Staff finds that the same conditions are appropriate for this new restaurateur, and that would be, 1, that it is approved for this applicant tenant business only, 2, that the approval for on-sale is an accessory use to a restaurant, and 3, submittal of a security management plan is required for review and approval of by the police department prior to license issuance. And I don't believe the applicant is here, and I may apologize for them. They don't speak English very well, and they were in this afternoon to talk with Lori Bossman, who handles the license part of it. And in that discussion, I didn't reiterate that they had to be here tonight, that they needed to contact Lori if this got approved tomorrow. And so I think something might have gotten missed in the translation. So I would ask that you still approve this, even if the applicant isn't here this evening because of a language barrier. And that concludes staff report.
All right, questions for Shauna? All right, thank you, Shauna. I'll ask if the applicant's here. I don't see anybody. Is there anyone from the audience who would care to speak on this item? Okay. If not, is there commission action on item 11B?
I'll move for approval.
I'll second.
Okay. That's what the stipulations?
Yes, sorry, Ken.
3 stipulations? All right.
3 stipulations.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any commission discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Item 11B is approved. Our next item is item number 12, a resolution amending the future land use map as part of the City of Sioux Falls 2015 Growth Management Plan, petition number 2007-10-03 at northeast corner of the intersection of East 57th Street and South Sycamore Avenue from the allocation of future single-family residential land use to an allocation of commercial and multifamily uses. Staff report, please.
Primarily, the purpose of this is to change future single-family land uses to future multifamily uses. The applicant did submit an application that described and answered 5 various questions. The applicant has met with surrounding landowners to discuss compatibility. The existing plan, according to the applicant, didn't make the best use of the land. We also asked the applicant how the future land use is consistent with the objectives and policies of the future growth management plan. The applicant has indicated that it is a manageable use and will serve the neighborhood well with a variation of uses. Staff also notes that the 2015 plan includes the general goals and policies that are consistent with this request. Because the existing plan didn't make the best use of the land according to the applicant, a new plan is much more user-friendly. Staff does note that the land use, location, and design criteria for multifamily is included in your staff report. And the applicant was asked to identify any changes that will affect utilities in the street system. There may be an effect on the sanitary sewer basin in this location, and the city engineer regarding sanitary sewer has asked the petitioner to work with HDR engineers to perform a hydraulic model evaluation to determine if the existing sanitary sewer system can accept the additional and higher density flows. At the time that staff did prepare the staff report, we were recommending deferral to allow the applicant to provide time to get that study underway. But the applicant has indicated that the study can be completed prior to preliminary subdivision request. And because of the timing of that study, staff is recommending that we approve this future land use amendment, and the applicant is aware that that sanitary sewer study does need to be complete prior to subdivision plan requests. So staff is recommending approval of the future land use amendment. And that concludes staff report.
Any questions for Shauna?
Shauna, that doesn't need to be a stipulation?
No, it doesn't.
Other questions?
Mr. Chair, Shauna, if we approve the future land use amendment, we would not see any request for rezone, though, until that study is complete?
Most likely, most often, the preliminary subdivision plan and the rezoning request go hand in hand. So I'm guessing we may see the rezoning request, but the applicant is here to talk about phasing if you want to ask that question. It's possible. It's the preliminary plan that we need to see before, and they can't subdivide any of the lands, and you can't get a building permit until it's subdivided. So.
But your rezoning would establish your densities.
Correct.
So it would make sense that you'd have your study done before you rezone, in my mind.
Other questions? Thank you. Is the applicant here, please?
Good evening. Jan Meilenberg, 812 South Minnesota Avenue. You're here for a first tonight in 20 years. This is the first time I've ever done a future land use amendment. To answer your question regarding the study, I was in contact with Mark Perry today, and he assured me that he has been talking with their consultant, their engineer, and they are confident that the study will be done prior to the first of the year. I have preliminary plans, and my engineer is preparing a rezoning exhibit to meet Monday's deadline for submittal of those. So yes, we plan on being here for rezoning on January 3rd, I believe it is. We held a neighborhood meeting because there were numerous neighbors. We had a slight attendance, but nobody was concerned. We've had a lot of meetings with the adjoining property owners, with planning staff and engineering regarding access, and access to the park, out of the park, onto 57th Street, and how we're going to handle that on the east side of this site.
Questions for Jan?
Jan, you're eliminating 38 single-family lots to do four-unit townhouses, what price range are you striving at there on these townhouses?
I believe they're well into the 100s, upper 100s, lower 200s. The same 4 units are, if you remember, the Canterbury Villas at East Madison and North Dubuque at Canterbury Heights. And the reason we have to go RA1 there is for those fourplex units is because you can't, in RD, you can't do multiple units on one site. They have to be individual lots.
Thank you.
Other questions for Jan? All right, thank you. Anyone from the audience care to speak on this item? Don't see any, so is there commission action on item 12?
I will move for approval.
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there commission discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Item 12 is recommended for approval. Item 13 is a resolution amending future land use map as a part of the Sioux Falls 2015 Growth Management Plan, petition number 2007-11-13 at North House Road and East Madison Street, from the allocation of future single-family residential land use to an allocation of commercial, office, institutional, multifamily, parks, and open space land uses. Staff report, please.
This is a 80-acre parcel that is currently planned for future land uses of single-family residential. The applicant is represented by Brian Bauer for Canterbury Heights East Addition. It's currently agricultural, and the applicant in their petition has stated that they are proposing to allow future land uses on the subject property for development of 39.6 acres of commercial, 3.7 acres of office, 14.9 acres of residential apartments, and 11.1 acres of attached single-family residential uses, leaving approximately 7.5 acres for conservation of drainage way. Based on those land uses in the future, the petitioner would come back for rezoning and subdivision. Presently, they're proposing that this future intersection of a highway, that is a state highway, and this minor arterial street would constitute significant impact on the land uses to justify proposing commercial, an expansion of commercial and multifamily uses. That, along with the topography of the site, and the restriction on access to the site based on access standards in the city, the applicant feels justifies the increase in commercial use. Staff has looked at it and has requested that the petitioner consider presenting to you this evening justification for the type of commercial that would be included in order to be compatible with the 2015 growth plan intent and purpose. We have looked at this intersection as being a neighborhood commercial location, neighborhood commercial services, and typically in the past those have been smaller commercial sites. It is not unusual, though, in the present day to provide additional commercial capacity to serve larger residential areas. There are no other commercial sites that are being proposed other than ones to the south in this part of town, and those are community shopping center type services. So neighborhood commercial is a reasonable expectation at this location. The applicant should be prepared to justify the type of commercial services and the character that are expected in the future. We've had no calls on this. We had one call on this. It was from a property owner further to the east who, when informed of the types of land uses that are being proposed, was not opposed to the land uses, but did state that they, as farm owners, large acreage owners, did not want to participate in any of that land use change and wanted to make sure that their property was not being included in the petition this evening. And I assured them of that fact. They said the petitioner had talked to them about possibly including some of their property, but they did not reach an agreement. That was the only call I took, and that concludes staff report.
Any questions for Steve?
Mr. Chair, Steve, was the future land use map, the original future land use map for 2015 developed, indicating a certain amount of commercial on this corner prior to the right-of-way being identified for Highway 100?
It did. Going back, and it's on the screen now in front of you, the viewers at home can also see it. It was indicated as a location of commercial services with multifamily uses around it to buffer and to transition from those commercial uses into lower density single family. That is the intent of the 2015 comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan land use map does not indicate quantities. It's not a scalable map. You can see comparisons of size, I guess, if you want to make those comparisons, and in those comparisons you can say that it looks like to be 3 to 5 acres of commercial there. But our land use map, as approved by the community and the City Council, did not specify quantities for those types of services. It did, in the comprehensive plan, describe neighborhood retail commercial services in the range of 10 to 25, 30,000 square feet possibly, for grocery store, drugstore, laundromat, those kinds of things that would be convenient to a neighborhood, a residential neighborhood. But that was back when the plan was approved, and that was on the basis of these being provided every mile, or the opportunity of these being provided every mile at a major intersection. We have no other intersections identified further to the north. The areas that we identified to the south were identified for major community type or even regional commercial services. So I would leave it to the applicant to justify the quantity that they're indicating on their plan this evening to serve a neighborhood commercial purpose.
Other questions for Steve?
Can we just clarify some terminology? I think what we're talking about on that future land use map designates it as a business park, correct?
Thank you. Meredith, I think your question was regards to was the arterial corridor shown previously, and as Sean has already shown, it was not. If you go on this map, you can see that the corridor was not shown on the previous future land use, and Shauna, when you show now, the corridor is shown, which is why the land use is changing. And again, the big changes between these two, when you see that they've put in the contours, you can see the drainage way as the transition, and you go previously to the, when we do future land uses, we never take into consideration any contours, any drainage ways. I mean, there's the aerial. You can actually see why they've put the transitions where they have. We don't take into consider that. We draw a box on top of their land and say it has to be like this. They've actually looked at it and say, Shauna, that's what it should look like. Here's where the drainage way is, and we'll put the transitions from that standpoint. As Anita's referenced, and I brought to Planning Commission before, and our viewing audience at home, this is the future land use over the next 25 years that staff recommends we moving towards. It's more of a node map. We're calling this intersection a business park intersection. We're not proposing to have necessarily all commercial at these intersections. However, as you see on this map in front of you, the land use that we're showing right now is red commercial, but that's not really what's going to take place there. We don't have the ability right now to show brown up on this map to show a business park, but that's the intent of what the future land use would show. Is more of a business park because of the limited access, because of the noise contours along the highway. It would be more of an office institutional area. There would be hotels, there would be restaurants, maybe a gas station, but it would not be all commercial.
Thank you.
Anything else for Jeff?
Jeff, I think Meredith and I have shared some concern over the past. I think all of us have looked at this corridor, and I look to the land directly to the north. Eventually that'll be brought in. The corridor is going to cut right through it. Can we expect the next petitioner to come in and say, hey, because of this corridor going through my ground, it's not conducive to residential real estate? I need commercial, office, multifamily?
Yes, you should expect that. As well as on the west side of Sioux Falls, as we've talked, if they're along the corridor, we're basically, from an engineering and planning standpoint, as well as not only city but state officials, telling property owners they are not allowed to develop residential along this corridor.
Thank you, Jeff.
Yep.
Anything else?
Mr. Chair, Jeff, Ken's right. I think when I first saw the large areas of red and pictured that as purely commercial, and have subsequently come to realize that that's really a mixed-use opportunity for the developer, that the real issue here is not so much how we amend the future land use map, but how we rezone and subdivide this property later on. And I think that's where we want to impact the types of uses that end up in these intersections.
And hopefully in time, in 3 months, let's say a month, in a little while, you'll see new land uses in front of you also. I just don't have them done at this point.
Jeff, this
But
would
with
be done.
Kenny's help, they should be done soon.
Well, thank you, Jeff. I'll do the best I can.
Thank you.
This is going to be done as a PD?
Yes.
This 80 acres?
Correct, because they've already done their conventional zoning on Canterbury itself on the single family, and so when they start looking at their non-residential, they do a planned development.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Jeff. Is the applicant here, please?
Jan Meilenberg, 812 South Minnesota. I'm here tonight for Canterbury East, representing the property owner. Mr. Bauer is here with me tonight, if you may have some questions for him. We did get a phone call from one property owner, and it's the lady that owns the property to the east. Her concern was, this doesn't involve my property, and she was assured that no, we were only taking action or making this change on the property that we own. I would like to stress that Canterbury and Canterbury East own approximately 320 acres in this area. So the amount of single family that we have or will be petitioning for out there far outweighs the amount of commercial that we have here. Two other points that I really need to stress. One is that major drainage way, the expense of crossing that major drainage way. We're having some issues on the east because we not only have this one, we've got a sister drainage way that mirrors it farther to the east that's really putting us into a tight spot. And the tight spot is access. City engineering is pushing us back to 1,320 feet, the quarter-mile point. That's it. That's it for dealing with medians. That's the only place you're going to get a full median cut. It's the only place you're going to get a light-controlled intersection where people can safely turn in and out. If you want something between there, in the middle at 660, you'll get a right in, right out, and it's looking like now we're going to have to pay for that access, just the right in, right out. Commercial property cannot survive on right in, right out, and people making U-turns and people trying to get through residential property to find a commercial property. It's just not feasible.
Any questions for Jan?
Mr. Chair, I would only say that we're looking at this as mixed-use development, not pure commercial.
Right.
And there are plenty of examples around the country of mixed-use developments that survive quite well with quarter-mile access.
Right, and mixed use, but mixed use is still, to me, a use that people need to get to.
Well, sure. Yes, but there are ways to design quarter-mile access and still do very good mixed-use developments. It's just we haven't seen it in Sioux Falls yet.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're kind of new at this.
Oh, yeah.
It's part of our
Yeah.
growing pains here.
I agree.
We're developing, I think we're doing very well. I think we're on the right track, taking
We're
the right
anxious,
steps.
we're very anxious as a planning commission to see some of the first plans that come back, because we think it's an exciting prospect, and for a lot of reasons, it's a good direction to go. Thank you.
Other questions for Jan? David?
Jan, as you look at the potential mixed use in that commercial area, has your thought process has gone as to what you would see there as far as the potential usages and what you would not see in that area? And I think what we're still trying to sort through is what would be the difference in mixed use versus in a regional center versus a neighborhood center. Just curious if that thought process has gone forward in it.
It's gone through my mind, but, you know, I live a mile south from here. I know what I would like to see. I would like to see uses where if I want a specialty shop, if I want something a little different, a little not Walmart, not Kmart, not Shopko, that I don't have to travel all the way to the west side of town to get. But then the market is what's going to push that. And I'm hoping the market goes that way because I live close.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you. Is there anyone from the audience care to speak on this item? Seeing none, is there commission action on item 13?
Mr. Chair, I would make the motion to approve the future land use amendment for item 13.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any commission discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Item 13 is recommended for approval. Item 14, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, rezoning property at 1001 West 10th Street and 211 South Menlo Avenue from the RA2 Residential District to the 10th and Menlo Plan Development District, petition number 2007-11-20, and amending the official zoning map of the City of Sioux Falls. Staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The applicant is proposing to rezone to a planned development district to provide an urban infill development of affordable housing. For planning considerations within the urbanized area, the planning policy framework is intended to focus and direct actions of the city to be consistent, workable, and planning approach. Older residential areas can remain assets to the city if these policies are effectively implemented. The 2015 growth plan calls for higher density housing development convenient to downtown and other major activity centers. Additionally, flexibility of land use and density in redevelopment of blighted areas should be provided when such development is compatible with surrounding residential areas. This site is located on the edge of the mayor's neighborhood conservation area. These efforts include creating a new neighborhood identity for the area. The location is at the corner of West 10th Street and Menlo Avenue. The site has been cleared of substandard housing. The site is irregularly shaped and slopes upward to the west. A scaled drawing for a concept and initial development plan has been provided. New planned development district accommodates a front porch type development. Single-family homes are required one parking space, which is accommodated in attached garages. When considering the proximity to schools, parks, churches, and on-sale alcohol establishments, Lincoln Elementary is located to the northwest. Emerson Park is located to the southwest. There are churches located to the north, but not in the immediate proximity. The nearest on-sale establishment is an accessory used to a restaurant, and it is located to the south. The proposed development scheme includes the 6 criteria required for an initial development plan, and the applicant will be required to provide information and documentation regarding ownership and maintenance responsibility of the courtyard common space located on the project. because the application fosters policies for urban infill development and increases inventories of affordable housing. Staff does recommend approval of the rezoning, and the proposed sub-area regulations follow your staff report at the very end. And that concludes staff report.
Questions for Shawna? All right, thank you.
Okay.
Is the applicant here, please?
Good evening. Dick Dempster, 415 South Main. I was just going to come listen tonight, but Jim Schmidt was supposed to do this presentation, but it's his birthday, so he had to go to Minerva's at 7:30. We started going to the mayor's neighborhood meetings. Diane DeCoyer and I, she's listed as the applicant, and listened to the committee talk about this neighborhood, and so we're volunteering our efforts to put a vision or a visual to the vision of the committee. And this site was identified as a demonstration project, and in looking around the neighborhood, we wanted to pick up a lot of the aspects. It's surprising how many of the houses in the neighborhood have porches, and people use the porches. The steeply pitched roofs, dormers, and so we wanted to try to convey that in this first demonstration project, and that's the concept that you see before you tonight. It needs to be developed, but I think it should be a good example of what can be done for affordable housing in this neighborhood.
Any questions for Dick?
Mr. Chair, Dick, I think this is a wonderful contextual example of contextual design. I'd like to have that center unit, if at all possible, with the little dormers on top. So
We'll see if you can qualify.
Congratulations. I think it's great.
Dick, excuse me, Mr. Chair. Does the Sioux Empire Partnership have other land that we would expect this similar development to?
I think they're looking in this neighborhood to do more projects.
Okay.
I can't say for certain, but I
this
know
was
they're very
developed
enthusiastic about this.
And this was developed specifically for them for this project?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Ken?
Dick, I echo the compliments. I think this is a very, very nice-looking project. It'll be a nice shot in the arm there. Is the concept ownership here, is this going to be a condominium concept as far as the common area?
It's my understanding, as far as, I think they're individual units, five units. How exactly the common area is going to be used or dealt with, I'm not certain.
A question of exterior paint. Will there be a common wall agreement with all the owners as far as roof color and paint of the individual units?
Certain that there will be, yes.
I would encourage that. I think uniformity, what I think might look nice, somebody else might have a difference of opinion in regards to it.
I know what you're saying.
Now, these are going to be sold to, actually sold to
Yes,
buyers.
That's correct.
Is there going to be a provision about converting these to rental properties with those particular individuals? And I say this, with South Dakota Housing, I'm aware of the fact, if you get a South Dakota Housing loan, one of the requirements is that A, you have to live in it, and B, it can't be used as rental property. And I suspect maybe some of the funding for this is going to come from South Dakota Housing.
Again, I'm not exactly sure, but
Something to just kind of keep an eye on as you guys finish this out just a little bit, Dick.
thank you.
Any other questions for Dick?
I don't want to be redundant here, but I love this plan. I think it's really going to fit in nicely on that street.
Thank you.
It's really nice there.
Yeah.
Dick, when do you propose that they'll begin constructing these?
The idea is to, we'll be back with the final development plan in a month or two.
Great.
And then as soon as the thaw comes out of the ground, I think they're ready to go.
Bring it on.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone from the audience care to speak on this item? All right, is there commission action on item 14?
I'll move for approval of item 14.
I second.
All right, there's a motion and a second. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Item 14 is recommended for approval. Item 15 is a resolution of the City of Sioux Falls approving the preliminary plan of Briarwood Estates addition at southeast corner of East 57th Street and South Sycamore Avenue. Staff report, please.
The applicants and owners are represented by Charles Point Ronning Enterprises Incorporated. It's a 109.3-acre site. Currently, it's agricultural use. To the north, it's vacant in the Sycamore Crossing PD. Otherwise, to the southeast and west, it's agricultural uses at the present time, some of which is outside the city. In looking at the subdivision ordinance and the applicant's purpose to subdivide the property to conform to the future land use plan for development, which that has been approved for 210 lots. Staff counts 190 single-family residential lots and 3 lots for recreation conservation, which leaves 17 lots available for mixed-use development of commercial, office, and multifamily residential. The applicant indicates a gross density for the entire property as 2.4 units per acre. That includes the commercial and non-residential use property as well. The applicant is proposing to rezone in the future. Therefore, we are looking to approve the subdivision plan with a future zoning that conforms with an approved future land use plan. It is possible in that zoning application in the future, while we look to make that zoning compatible with the approved subdivision plan, that you still have yet to approve that zoning plan. Therefore, we're requesting approval on a phased development of the property, which excludes a phase that cannot be served by sewer at the present time. That makes it more likely that the applicant can provide a subdivision plan that is compatible with the proposed zoning in the future. Otherwise, they provided all of the required documents, and it is in conformance with the comprehensive plan and approved future land uses. The required property area and required area for lots will be approved in the future zoning. And city engineering recommendations and comments have been included in your staff report for them to address in their final plan to be approved by the city engineer. Therefore, staff has recommended that because it offers coordination of urban infrastructure and fosters efficient and orderly urban growth, that the plan be approved with 3 stipulations. 1, that the preliminary plan is approved for phases 1 to 5 only, and 2, that the rezoning of the property is required prior to submittal of final engineering plans, and 3, that the city engineer approval of the revised preliminary plan is required prior to public hearing by city council. That concludes staff report.
Any questions for Steve?
Mr. Chair, I guess it's kind of an engineering-related question, but we keep talking about this 4-mile access. Does that not apply to residential developments as well?
It does. That's why the notes indicate that the city engineering office has not approved the access points as indicated in the plan. This is a preliminary plan. Those access points do have to be applied for by the petitioner for access to those subdivided areas as you see the layout.
Other questions for Steve? All right, thank you. Is the applicant here, please?
Hello, excuse me. Janelle Swear, 320 North Main. I wanted to address the access. From my understanding is, excuse me, there's an access process that has not been finished yet, and the applicant plans on applying for access after the first of the year when that process is complete. And right now, we are preparing rezoning petitions to be submitted.
Okay. Any questions for Janelle? All right, thank you. Anyone from the audience care to speak on this item? If not, is there commission action on item 15?
Mr. Chair, I would make the motion to approve the preliminary subdivision plan with the 3 stipulations.
I'll second.
All right, there's a motion and a second. Is there commission discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Item 15 is recommended for approval with 3 stipulations. Item 16 is special use permit in sub-area E, Meadows on the River PD, to allow on-sale alcohol establishment as an accessory use to a restaurant at 2530 South Louise Avenue. Staff report, please.
I'd like to request if the applicant is here this evening.
On item 16?
Yes.
Is the applicant here for item 16?
Okay, the applicant is from Rapid City, and I don't know if the weather is playing a part in that or not. They did not contact us that they would not be here this evening. The use, I can, describe the use as being a replacement of a use that was previously approved, and they're not making any changes. The only thing that you would be really looking at this evening would be the menu and hours of operation.
I'm not really comfortable in moving too far down a path where we start approving things without applicants. My preference would be to defer item 16 for 30 days to allow the applicant time to appear before us.
Is that a motion, Anita?
That is a motion.
I'll second.
All right, there's a motion to defer item number 16 until the next meeting. Is there a motion and a second? Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Item 16 is deferred till our next meeting. Item 17 is a conditional use permit in the C2 General Commercial District to allow off-site parking within 150 feet of a residential district or use at northwest corner of intersection of Indiana Avenue and East 8th Street. Staff report, please.
Thank you. The applicant and owners here are representative of the banquet. Staff would like to remind you of the conditional use standard for parking lots or ramps within 150 feet of a residential district. Parking lots and ramps within 150 feet of a residential district shall be constructed in a manner that will cause a minimum amount of impact on adjacent residential uses. Screening of the lot from the residential structures should be done. Care should be taken so that any lighting of the facility should be of the type that would not reflect on adjacent residential areas. The conditional use plan has been drawn to scale with the north arrow provided. There are no structures proposed, just a parking lot. There are 2 existing single-family homes that will be removed. These are, okay, to put it probably politically incorrect, they're pretty much eyesores, those houses that are there. So the staff does support the removal of those single-family homes. Plan does not reflect landscaping, which is required, and the applicant should be willing to discuss landscaping with the Planning Commission. Additionally, the applicant has provided a new site plan, which is in your addendum packet, and pictures of fencing that was provided to offer screening between the residential homes and the existing banquet building, and they are proposing a similar screen fence on the north side of this parking lot. Because the application has provided clarity to indicate the location, nature, and extent of the work proposed, and does require a complete plan check by Zoning and Building Services prior to obtaining a building permit, staff does recommend approval of the conditional use permit with 2 conditions. First, that the front yard setback is provided and landscaped as required by the Sioux Falls zoning ordinance. That is a 10-foot setback, and the site plan that was presented to the Planning Commission this evening originally does reflect the 10-foot setback. The revised plan in your addendum packet along 8th Street shows a lesser setback, and the applicant is here to explain that. But our recommendation is that the full 10-foot be provided on both 10th and Indiana. 2, that the crime prevention officer is consulted regarding security and site security and lighting. They have done that. They have visited with Officer Greg Schmidt regarding site lighting and security. So that does conclude staff report.
Any questions for Shauna? All right, thank you. Is the applicant here, please?
Good evening. Keith Thompson, 431 North Phillips. The revised plan that was provided after these two initial plans came about with after discussions with city zoning department staff, in that the setback along 8th Street on this given block is actually determined by the existing buildings on the north side of 8th Street. And it's in the zoning ordinance that when over 40% of the frontage is occupied by existing buildings, you can, the setback's determined by the average setback of those buildings, which is where we came up with the 5-foot 8-inch setback versus the 10-foot as earlier presented. And this plan has been approved by preliminarily approved by zoning staff. So that's the only difference there. And then so the two plans now are really option C and option A. Option C would comply with all setbacks, not requiring a variance, and option A is our option to get the most amount of parking on the site, but it would require a zoning variance.
All right, any questions for Keith? All right, thank you.
Keith, excuse me.
Hang on a second.
Keith, the plan you want us to vote on tonight is,
Well, we want the conditional use for parking.
it's a
essentially.
5-foot 8-inch setback.
Right. And then we would like to have it without the stipulation for the setback along 8th Street in order to gain the most parking, with the understanding that that would still have to be approved by the Board of Adjustment.
Staff is recommending 10 feet, Keith.
Right. And in no case would 10 feet be required by the zoning ordinance. It'd be 5'8".
At 10 feet, what happens to your parking lot here?
And we lose 4 more spaces, looks like.
You lose 4 spaces?
Right. That's kind of the difference between option B and option C.
I think staff said you were going to fence the back part of this.
Right, that'd be required.
Any other trees or landscaping?
Yeah, the intent would be to meet all landscaping requirements, which would probably be the 1 tree for every 6 spaces. So we'd be at 6 or 7 trees.
Thank you, Keith.
Any other questions for Keith? Thank you. Anyone from the audience care to speak in this item?
Dan Cook, 2525 South Main. I'm here representing the banquet as a board member, and I've been a building chairman on the building of the banquet and involved in purchasing these 2 lots from Roger Cook next door that you've pointed out very aptly that are eyesores. As if you saw on TV last night, the SWAT team was practicing over there for the final go on the buildings. But Banquet built their new building with a fair amount of resistance from the neighborhood over the last couple of years, and I think the neighborhood has found that we've become very good neighbors. Our problem has been that Quest allowed us to use their lot free of charge south of the Chinese restaurant right there. And we've had difficulty because we allow the guests to park right next to the banquet because we feel that that's their guests and they should be closest to the building. And the people that serve at the banquet are the ones that walk the block or two. And we've had some security concerns with them walking, and we were very successful in our fund drive to build the building. And we had some additional funds upon the completion of the fund drive and looked to try to find some additional parking that would fit in with the need in the neighborhood. And so I guess we're asking that we have anywhere from 30 to 40 people serve at the banquet, and that is the area where they will park. So losing 4 or 5 spots will put us back. We'll certainly be a lot better off than we were before, but having the additional 4 or 5 spots will be certainly a big advantage to us and will be something that will serve the banquet well.
Any questions for Dan?
Mr. Chair, Dan, on my way here tonight, I drove down Indiana, and there's a lot of congestion in front of and both sides of the street there at Indiana, so I can imagine that having some parking across the street would certainly help some of that. Also know that the 62-foot for 2 cars and a driving lane is pretty tight. I think ideal is usually 64. So if you were to lose the 4 foot or so by having to go back to 10 foot, that would have an impact on the ability to effectively use that parking lot, is my understanding.
We'd have to tighten up all the parking spots that are there, and each spot that we would lose would be the lot. The interesting thing, and not to, I know this becomes a fairly long meeting for everyone, but the building that's still there, the commercial building, Roger Cook, we've worked on an agreement when we purchased these 2 lots from him that he has 10 parking spots from 8 in the morning until 5 at night. And at 5 at night, he has to have the lot totally cleared. And basically, we will use the lot probably from approximately 5 o'clock till 8 o'clock. And that'll be the main usage. There'll be, the banquet serves free breakfasts, but that'll be out of there by 8 or 8:30 in the morning. So the lot will be, it won't be used that much, but when it is, there will be a high concentration, like you indicated, Meredith.
Thank you.
Dan, you mentioned that, do you have 30 volunteer servers a day?
Sometimes as many as 40 will serve at the banquet.
Per day?
Mm-hmm. We've had, during the course of the banquet's history, I think there's been 900 different groups that have served there. And there'll be church groups from Inwood, Iowa, to Faulkton, South Dakota, to Kiwanis Club in Highmore. So it's, and this will really, be a great, addition. If anybody, I'm sure probably everybody here has served at the banquet. If you remember the downtown location where people had to scramble for a parking spot, this will be like a real luxury, and it'll be a real addition to the banquet, which is a great addition to Sioux Falls.
Dan, maybe I missed this, but did you say, did you have a neighborhood meeting and talk to the adjoining landowners?
We have, yes. And one of these houses that's being torn down has been empty for years and has been probably a mouse and rat haven. The other one has been in fairly deteriorating condition, and the neighborhood was 100% in favor of us turning this into a parking lot. It'll really clean up the neighborhood, and it'll just be a real nice addition in that corner. And needless to say, the Chinese restaurant, people parked in their parking lot a few times, and they had our volunteers towed. And so we had, and they had to cross the busy 8th Street. Now there's a easy access crossing Indiana, which is not a very busy street. But in answer to your question, yes, we have. I've had no objections.
Any other questions?
Dan, I'm so glad you were able to purchase that land. It's just going to be a wonderful addition, and you're exactly right. It's going to clean up that neighborhood so much.
Yeah, thanks, ma'am. Yeah, that really. Hopefully, those buildings will come down in the next 4 or 5 days. We've had a couple companies step forward and volunteer to demolish them for us, so it'll be nice. And the hope is to put a gravel parking lot in this winter and allow the ground to settle a little bit, and then hopefully by May or June we'll have whichever parking lot gets approved tonight.
Thanks for all your hard work, too.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anyone else care to speak in this item?
Mr. Chair, I think it would be appropriate to have staff come up and address this setback and variance issue, because I don't think we're
You're
capable
confused
of
yet?
doing the variance part.
Right. There's a lot of different parts of this plan. The first one came in, and they indicated 0 setbacks on both 18th Street and 10th Street. Planning staff made it very clear that, from the beginning, that we would not support a 0 setback, that the required setback in the C2 planned commercial, or excuse me, general commercial district is only 10 feet, and that our expectation would be to accommodate that 10-foot front yard on both 8th and Indiana. Now, and that plan then was revised and to show that they can make the 10-foot setback work. Then the applicant had a discussion with zoning ordinance or zoning officials and found that there is a segment in other yard regulations that allows setbacks to be established by existing buildings on the majority portion of the block. And so there's a way that they calculate it, and if there's more than 40%, you take the average of the setback on that block to determine what the setback should be. In this case, they could go down to 5.8 and still be in keeping of what the front yard setback could be. However, staff still is recommending, what we do when we have a redevelopment infill project, we ask the question, what does this conditional use permit do to bring the neighborhood up? And our opinion is that a 10-foot setback should be provided on both Indiana and 8th Street, just to provide separation between that sidewalk and moving vehicles, parked cars. The applicant is asking that it would be allowed for them to go down to 5.8 feet, and that would not require a variance from the Board of Adjustments, because it is allowed in other yard regulations after it was calculated by the zoning officials. Our recommendation is still that they provide 10 feet. And you can decide whether to put that condition on there or not. Does that clarify? Okay. So we have 3 separate site plans. The first one was 0 on both sides. The other one showed 10 feet on both sides, and the other one did show 5.8 along 8th Street.
Did that one show 10 feet on Indiana then?
Yes.
Mr. Chair, I've got a question regarding, regardless of what we do for setback there, what would be the expectation for the ground cover there?
The ground cover would have to be, in the front yard, has to be 90% living ground cover. So living ground cover can be sod, grass, juniper, sometimes they do those low-lying hedges. There's a variety, but it has to be 90% of that area has to be living ground cover. It can't be rocks.
And this site has 2 front yards.
Correct. 2
So
front
it-
yards, yes.
Required on both Indiana and 8th.
Correct.
Anything else for Shauna? Okay, thank you. Anyone else care to speak on this item? If not, is there commission action?
Mr. Chair, I would like to make the motion to approve the conditional use permit with the setback represented in parking option B. If this was a building, and I know in many cases we've been asked to reduce side yard, front yard setbacks as it relates to buildings, I think that's a different issue than a parking lot. If at some point in time somebody came back and asked to build on this parking lot, I think that we would certainly want to reinforce or go back and enforce the required setbacks per the zone. But in this case, I think the 5.8 foot on a parking lot that's sparingly used would, at least for me, be acceptable. And then I guess we still need to retain the stipulation regarding the crime prevention officer consulting regarding site security.
So just for clarification, your motion is changing stipulation 1 so that it's 5.8-foot setback on 8th Street, 10 foot on Indiana.
Yes.
I'll second that motion, Mr. Chair.
All right, there's a motion and a second. Any commission discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Item 17 is recommended for approval. Sorry, did I say item 18? It's item 17 is approved. Item 18 is a special use permit in the Washington Crossing Plan Development District to allow off-sale alcohol establishment as their accessory use to a takeout restaurant at 408 North Sycamore Avenue. Staff report, please.
As you indicated, Mr. Chair, the applicant is proposing to operate a takeout restaurant with takeout alcoholic beverages, primarily European beer. The standards for off-sale alcohol, now that's different than on-sale. They wouldn't be able to consume it on-site. They have to purchase it for consumption off-site. Therefore, off-sale alcohol beverage establishment has a little bit different criteria than on-sale. The first criteria and standard is that the location is compatible with characteristics of surrounding uses and is not injurious to surrounding properties. The applicant is here this evening to discuss impacts to the area. The second criteria is that a management plan be approved to address operational issues, including employee training and supervision of customers, enforcement of age-restrictive product sales, and smoking policy on the premises for establishments within 500 feet of a school property. You may note that Washington High School is within 500 feet, and the applicant has contacted the crime prevention officer regarding a security management plan, and that has been approved. The applicant should be willing to report any information provided by the administration of the high school. The gas station final development plan was approved by the Planning Commission in July of 2006. The site did note that a food partner in the southern portion of the building would be a future tenant. The Planning Commission or City Council may approve additional conditions to be shown on the conditional use plan and addendum. No supplemental information has been provided. The Planning Commission may want to ask regarding the hours of operation or any other information that you deem necessary. Because the application should be able to address operational issues prior to the approval of the use, staff does recommend approval of the conditional use permit with two conditions. One, that the security management plan be approved by the crime prevention officer, which has been done, but I'd like to leave that as a condition, so it's ongoing as part of this conditional use permit. And two, that the applicant contacts Washington High School administration for comments. And that concludes staff report.
Questions for Shauna?
Shauna, just so I understand, this isn't a sit-down restaurant.
My understanding is from what the applicant has described to me, it would be takeout.
Thank you.
Shauna, excuse me, I was sneezing. I think I missed something here.
Okay.
Did you say he had contacted Washington High?
He's here this evening. You can ask him that.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
All right, thank you, Shauna. Is the applicant here, please?
Les Pietruszkiewicz, 433 North Linwood Court.
Anything to add?
Les Pietruszkiewicz, 433 North Linwood Court.
Do you have anything to add to the...
I didn't contact the school. I didn't contact the school yet, and the operation hours would you consider? I didn't thinking yet, but will be probably from 7 in the morning when people go to work, or maybe even from 6 if they want to grab something with them, because there will be no eating inside. Be ready food to take home or take with you and warm up in microwave. So I didn't decide what hours will be it, 6 or 7, something like that. And Sunday will be not open because that's most people going home, get the gas and pick up food and go home. So not necessarily running business on Sunday. And to support that high rent over there, I thought maybe that liquor on-site sale will help additional revenue to bring in.
Questions for Les?
Les, did I hear you say this is just going to be pickup food only?
Right.
People call up?
Yes.
Do you have a drive-up window here?
No.
So they'll actually come
They have
into
to
the-
get inside to the store and maybe be table 1, just if somebody waiting on and they want to eat the sandwich. I don't know if I will make it sandwiches, but probably one table will be so employee can rest or have a break time or so, not for normal usage as a restaurant.
In the past, we've had some concerns about advertising liquor and banners around schools. If you weren't allowed to put banners out advertising
No, I
liquor,
don't
would
need
that
that.
be an issue?
No, I will be not required, and I don't think so. I wanted that because most likely will be this type place like on 41st Street named Troika. They have a European food, Polish sausage, and all kind of stuff like I have that before in Polish Plate, the restaurant what I run it for a few years. So it will be just instead eat there and sit down, or we'll be ready to take home and warm up. So I don't think so I will have a problem with that.
Any other questions?
Staff, are you going to put some kind of a time frame on his visit with Washington High?
He would have to, prior to getting the license, he would have to make sure to have those comments to us. So I would guess that in working with Lori Bossman, he will be required prior to getting his off-sale license. You could tie it to the issuance of the license.
Okay.
Shauna, an off-sale license means that if somebody's sitting there waiting for a sandwich, can they buy alcohol and drink it in the establishment?
No,
They have to
they
take it?
can buy it, but they can't drink it there.
Thank you.
Thank you, Shauna. Any other questions for Les? All right, thank you. Anyone else care to speak on this item? All right, if not, is there commission action? Item 18.
Mr. Chair, I would recommend approval of item number 18 with 2 stipulations. However, I would add stipulation number 3, that this conditional use permit is for this applicant and business only. Because there's an alcohol element there, and maybe it would be good to have that in there. Oops.
We've kind of been saying tenant, if you want
Tenant.
to say this tenant
This
only.
tenant and business only?
For this tenant only? That'd be correct.
That would be correct. Thank you, sir.
So I would recommend that stipulation number 3 reads that this conditional use permit is for this tenant only.
All right, there's a motion adding stipulation number 3. Is there a second?
I would like to second David's motion, but suggest an expansion of the stipulations if I could. I think that we should add a 4th stipulation that no exterior signage would be allowed relative to advertising alcohol or tobacco. And then I would also suggest that we just amend the 2nd stipulation to read that the license will not be granted until the applicant contacts Washington High School administration and comments are submitted back to planning staff. So I approve David's motion, would ask your consideration, David, for expansion of these items.
I would agree.
Staff, how do we handle that? It's okay okay, so the motion has been made and seconded for 4 stipulations. Number 3 being this tenant only. Item 4, no exterior alcohol signage, and then amending item 2 that it won't be, license will not be approved until the Washington High administration has been contacted, correct? All right, there's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
I would agree with Anita. I'd like to see documentation from the administration at Washington stating that they're okay with that location before it's approved.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Any other discussion? All right, on item 18, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Item 18 is approved with 4 stipulations. Item 19 is a conditional use permit in the C4 Planned Commercial District for an on-sale alcohol establishment as an accessory use to a restaurant at 607 South Sycamore Avenue. Staff report, please.
The applicant is Doug Hendricks, and the owners are represented by Kevin and Linda Nyberg. It's a 2.9-acre site, and the existing use is a multi-tenant commercial facility. The applicant is proposing to occupy the southern portion of the existing multi-tenant building with on-sale alcohol establishment as an accessory use to a restaurant. They provided a menu. And parking is to be shared with other building tenants in the existing parking lot on the east side of the building along Sycamore Avenue. The seating capacity of the restaurant is indicated as 176, and an outdoor seating area is indicated on the site plan, but the seating capacity is not shown. Because of the proximity of this location to residential uses, staff is not recommending approval of the outdoor seating as stipulated so. Also, required parking could not be used for that outdoor seating in any case. Other building tenants are indicated on not indicated on the plan, but currently include Ace Hardware and the Dollar Store. The applicant's tenant space is 6,030 square feet, and they're proposing that alcoholic beverages will be an accessory use on the menu as provided. The applicant should this evening indicate the hours of business and security management being discussed and approved prior to the license being issued, and report any neighborhood comments at this public hearing. Because the application is clear and will have a complete plan check by Zoning and Building Services, prior to obtaining a building permit, staff recommends approval with the following stipulations. 1, that it's approved as an accessory use to a restaurant for this tenant only. 2, that the use of required parking spots for outdoor seating is not permitted. And 3, that the security management approved by Community Services section of the Sioux Falls Police Department is required prior to the start of business. And we've had no calls on this application. That concludes staff report.
Questions for Steve?
Steve, I see that they're going to have video lottery.
That is indicated on their floor plan. That's correct.
Explain to me now, if we issue this conditional use permit, does this then go to the council for their approval?
The applicant should address that. The representative is here this evening.
Thank you.
Jeffrey?
The question, Kenny, is whether or not this conditional use will go to City Council. No, it will not. It's the same as what we heard this evening earlier. Whether or not this applicant applies for a video lottery license or a liquor license or beer and wine, that's a separate item that will go to City Council. This conditional use will not go to City Council unless it gets appealed.
Thank you.
All right, is the applicant here, please?
Hi, Doug Hendricks, Sioux Falls. The way I understand it, is that we still have to, the license has to be, to go to City Council.
Thought that's how it was when we talked about earlier, and it turned out that wasn't necessarily the case.
Yeah, I thought this was pretty simple, and I kind of got caught off guard and blindsided here by, and I hopefully don't get caught up in the previous controversy. But the license still has to, the site's being approved for on-sale alcohol, but the license has to go to City Council. Is that correct? So.
Okay.
All right, do you have anything to add to this, Doug?
I'll answer any questions you have.
Can you talk with us a little bit about the outdoor seating? Because right now we've got a stipulation that it's not being permitted. Is that?
That's not the way I understood it. It
comfortable
was
with that?
just had something to do with the parking. Is that correct?
Our stipulation number 2 reads, use of required parking spaces for outdoor seating is not permitted. Now, I saw that you noted
It
on
had
your plan.
something to do with just, what's that?
Stipulation states that outdoor required parking cannot be used for outdoor seating. Staff understands the situation that they apparently don't comply with the minimum parking requirements for this facility anyway, so it's highly doubtful that they would get approved. However, the Board of Adjustment could reduce the required number of parking spots for this facility, which would allow the applicant to put in outdoor seating. If you are opposed to outdoor seating at this location, you would have to so stipulate. Staff has tied it to the required parking.
Steve, I have a question. Are there parking spots on the south side of the building there?
There are parking spots indicated on the site plan. The applicant's site plan also has a note that outdoor seating would be provided at that location.
And so it's over the parking spots, is what you're saying?
It's over the parking spots, as far as we know.
All right.
The way I understand the way we can have outdoor seating, assuming we have enough parking places, correct?
He's looking at me, he's assuming that he has more than what's required for parking. I can't speak to that, I haven't done the plan check and haven't spoken to any zoning official to assure that the required parking or the parking on site exceeds what's required. But that's his understanding, is he has more than enough parking.
So if there's enough parking, you don't have any problem, Shauna, or Steve, with outdoor seating?
I don't know enough about the outdoor seating. There isn't a plan for his outdoor seating indicating how many, exactly how that would be arranged, what's the relationship to the adjacent residential uses. I don't have enough information to say that. The best I could do is tie it to the required parking, that it not be allowed to be used for outdoor seating. If you feel that outdoor seating should not be provided at that location, you should so stipulate.
Thank you. Any other questions for Doug?
Doug,
Yes.
there's a note on your plan that shows general location for the outdoor seating would be on the west side?
South side.
South side. On the,
South side.
thank you. I'm good.
Are there apartment houses directly behind this?
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, guess not. Thank you. Is there anyone else from the audience who would care to speak on this item? You can go. You're done. Thank you. And there's no one else that cares to speak on this item. Is there commission action? Item 19.
Mr. Chair, seeing that this will go through plan check, and I'm sure they'll check at that time the required parking, and if there's any indication at that time of outdoor seating, that would be considered. I would make the motion to approve the conditional use permit with the 3 stipulations.
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. Any commission discussion?
So we're saying we're not allowing outside seating.
No, my motion is to leave the wording of stipulation number 2 as is, so that if there's enough parking to support the restaurant and the outdoor seating, that it can happen.
Okay, and my concern is the apartment buildings behind and the children in the area. B&G's only a block away, and kids are there. And if we have outside seating, there's outside consumption of alcohol. It's a concern.
Is there any other discussion?
I'd be curious as to the rules of outdoor seating. Is there a time limit? Bars can be open until 2 o'clock in the morning. Is outdoor seating allowed until 2 o'clock in the morning?
Are you asking me?
I'm just wondering if anybody knows.
Steve, are you going to just address that?
The answer is yes.
Yeah. I echo that concern, and I apologize that I let the north-south arrows throw me off on my line of question, but I'm wondering if I wouldn't feel a little better if we could just add a stipulation that would require a fence screening or some sort of a physical barrier on what is obviously the south side of that property. If that would make me feel a little better relative to the B&G.
Is there another business in between?
Casey's.
Casey's. There is that separation.
You guys, come on up. It's fine.
The type of clientele that we would be attempting to attract is like Ruby Tuesdays, like Applebee's, like Boston's. On the other hand, we're locally owned. We're not. It's not a. I shouldn't say it's a franchise. And maybe this is being characterized wrong, but it's an outdoor patio like Bracco's has, like the Lone Star Steakhouse has, like Trey has. I mean, I can go on and on and on with various places, and I don't see it as being offensive. So I just want to kind of clarify what type of establishment it is.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, just a clarification then. It would be your intention then to add outside seating, outdoor seating to this establishment?
Oh, yes. Yeah, an outdoor patio.
Okay.
You know, Bracco's has, I mean, it's a popular thing in the...
But you understand Commissioner Boyston's concern that maybe some of those other applications are not where unsupervised children would be.
I'm sorry?
Well, the
children will be allowed in this
No.
restaurant.
But there's children right behind your location. That's my concern, where Bracco's and Ruby Tuesdays and Boston's, there's not residential right next to the outdoor patio.
There is a fence, and I mean, there behind the building is where the dumpsters are. There's a fence. There's a definite barrier there between there's garages, and then there's the apartments. So,
thank you.
And of course, staff wouldn't allow kids to.
Right. So. Just the area.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
But,
we do
but
have,
kids with their parents would definitely be welcome.
Yes.
we do have a motion and a second with the 3 stipulations. Is there other commission discussion?
Would you read those stipulations again, Mr. Chair?
Sure. Item 1 is approved as accessory use to a restaurant for this tenant only. Item 2 is use of required parking spaces for outdoor seating is not permitted. Number 3 is security management plan approved by the Community Services section of the Sioux Falls Police Department is required prior to start of business.
Did I need to make an additional stipulation to that?
No, I brought some discussion, but I'm getting more comfortable as we go, so I'm okay.
Any other discussion? Okay, if there isn't any, on item 19, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Item 19 is approved. Item 20 is a conditional use permit in the C2 General Commercial District for an on-sale alcohol establishment, 2501 West 10th Street. Staff report, please.
The applicant is Dry Dumpstra, and the owner is Jim Bruns, Bruns Development. Existing land use is a multi-tenant commercial building, close to completion on construction. The applicant is proposing to occupy the northern portion of the existing multi-tenant building with on-sale alcohol establishment. Parking is shared with the other building tenants in an existing parking lot on the west side of the building along West 10th Street. And the seating capacity of the business is indicated by the applicant's floor plan is 66. with 7 video lottery machines. The 3 criteria for establishing or allowing this land use: first, that it not create an undue concentration does not appear to be a factor at this location. Number 2, it's not in an area where children could be expected to frequent, patronize, or recreate. Staff feels that the entrance and activity associated with this business is separated from the existing residential neighborhood by the building and parking itself, so it does not appear to be a factor. And 3, it is that it be compatible with characteristics of surrounding uses and not injurious to surrounding properties. The commercial nature of this commercial subdivision appears to be an appropriate fit to the corner of the neighborhood, and there is adequate separation and buffer of the neighborhood. The applicant's proposed business is 1,920 square feet, and we've had no calls on this application. Staff is recommending approval with 2 stipulations: 1, that it be approved for this tenant only, and 2, that outdoor seating is not permitted.
Don't you have 3 stipulations?
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah, 3. On the next page, security management plan, the standard security management plan be approved prior to the start of business.
All right, thank you, Steve. I do have a question. So if you compare it to the last one, the main difference, if I'm correct, is that that was an accessory use to a restaurant, and this is an on-sale alcohol establishment.
That's correct.
Any other questions for Steve? Thank you. Is the applicant here, please?
Dwight Dimestrom, 2108 South 5th Avenue, Sioux Falls.
Anything to add?
No, I don't.
Okay. Any questions for Dwight?
Dwight, you didn't want any outdoor seating?
Not there.
Thank you.
Anything else? All right, thank you. Anyone else from the audience care to speak on this item? If not, is there commission action on item 20?
I'll move for approval with the 3 stipulations as stated.
Is there
I'll
a second?
second.
All right, there's a motion and a second. Any commission discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Item 20 is approved with the 3 stipulations. Item 21 is an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, amending the revised ordinance of the city by amending Appendix B, zoning ordinance, to set standards for multifamily parking along private streets. Staff report, please.
Thank you. Staff's been working with the development community, fire prevention, and Public Works to address improving availability to address multifamily housing and residential buildings when part of a multi-building project. In order to be addressed, buildings have to be located on the street, whether it's public or private. Driveways are not addressed. Under today's zoning requirements, front yards are required on all streets, whether they're public or private, and parking is not allowed in this required front yard. In order to foster public safety by allowing better emergency response, staff is proposing an ordinance revision that allows reduced setbacks and parking in private street front yards. This will allow development of private streets to accommodate better addressing systems and differentiate parking requirements along private streets for development of multifamily housing. Because the ordinance amendment offers a solution for improved addressing and parking standards, staff does recommend approval of the zoning ordinance amendment. And that concludes staff report.
Questions for Shauna? All right, thank you. Anyone from the audience care to speak on this item? If not, is there commission action? Item 21.
I would move for approval on item number 21.
I second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Item 21 is recommended for approval. Item 22 is an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, amending Appendix B, Chapter 15.71, fees of the revised ordinances of the city by revising planning and zoning application fees, and item 22 has been withdrawn by staff. Item 23 is an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, amending the revised ordinance of the city defining and setting standards for salvage operations by amending Appendix B, zoning ordinance. Staff report.
Back in 1993, the ordinances were put in place for recycling facilities and recycling operations. Since that time, salvage yards, salvage operations and salvage facilities have also been underneath recycling facilities. This is to clarify that there's actually a difference between recycling and salvage. We're using the same terminologies, the same descriptions, but we're separating that there is a land use difference between recycling and salvage. Send staff report.
Any questions for Jeff? Thank you. Anyone from the audience care to speak on this item? If not, is there commission action on item 23?
I move to approve item 23.
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Item 23 is recommended for approval. Item 24 is adjournment. Is there a motion?
So moved. Second.
Motion is second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned.